My beloved child, pause here for a moment, because what you are about to hear was meant to find you before doubt could create the wrong story in your heart. Do not scroll away. Something happened last night, beneath soft lights and behind the quiet walls of a place you have never seen, and the truth of that evening is not what your mind would first imagine. Your soulmate was sitting across from someone at a dinner table. There were 2 glasses, 2 chairs, and a conversation that began with an ordinary question. Yet heaven was present in every silence between their words, because that dinner was never truly about the person sitting in front of them. It was about you. Stay with me, because there is a detail from that night that changes everything. When your soulmate agreed to attend that dinner, they told themselves it was only a simple meeting. Nothing serious. Nothing that could touch the hidden chamber of their heart where your memory still lives. They tried to approach the evening calmly, as though they had finally become strong enough to sit across from another person without comparing every expression, every laugh, and every gentle movement to you. They believed they could prove something to themselves. They believed they could silence the questions that had followed them through lonely nights. But the moment they entered that place, something inside them began to resist. The room was warm. Soft music moved through the air. People around them were laughing, speaking, celebrating, and living as though their hearts had never known confusion. Your soulmate noticed everything, yet felt connected to nothing. They took their seat and smiled politely, but their spirit was somewhere else. Their eyes were at the table, but their thoughts had already wandered toward a face they had tried not to remember. Your face. Do not skip, because the reason they were there is more surprising than the dinner itself. For days, someone close to your soulmate had been encouraging them to go. This person had noticed how withdrawn they had become, how often they would stare at their phone without sending the message forming in their mind, and how their energy changed whenever your name was spoken. They wanted your soulmate to move forward, to stop waiting for a sign, and to accept the possibility that perhaps another person could offer them the peace they had been searching for. Your soulmate resisted at first. They said they were too busy. They said they were not ready. They said it would be unfair to meet someone while their emotions were still unsettled. But underneath those excuses was a deeper fear. They were afraid that sitting across from another person would reveal just how deeply their feelings for you remained. And that is exactly what happened. The person seated across from them was kind. They listened carefully. They asked thoughtful questions. They smiled at the right moments and spoke with warmth. From the outside, it looked like a promising evening. Anyone passing by might have assumed your soulmate was enjoying a beautiful new beginning. But heaven does not judge a moment by appearances. Heaven sees the thoughts hidden behind the eyes. Heaven hears the name the heart whispers while the mouth speaks another. And throughout that entire dinner, your name moved silently through your soulmate's spirit. The first time it happened was when their date asked, "What kind of person makes you feel understood?" Your soulmate froze for half a second. It was such a simple question, yet it opened a door they had tried to keep closed. A memory rose instantly. They remembered a time when you noticed something about them that everyone else had missed. Perhaps it was the sadness behind their smile. Perhaps it was the way they became quiet when overwhelmed. Perhaps it was how they needed reassurance but struggled to ask for it. Whatever the memory was, it returned with such clarity that your soulmate had to look away. They gave a careful answer. They spoke in general words. They said they valued honesty, patience, loyalty, and emotional depth. But every quality they described was connected to you. The person across from them did not know this. They did not know that each sentence was secretly a portrait. They did not know that your soulmate was not describing an imaginary ideal. They were describing the one person who had already entered their heart. Stay till the end, because the identity of their dinner companion is not the only revelation waiting for you. Something happened later in the evening that your soulmate never expected, and it forced them to confront the truth they had been avoiding. As the conversation continued, the other person asked about past relationships, missed opportunities, and the kind of connection your soulmate hoped to find. Your soulmate tried to remain composed, but every question drew them closer to the truth. They could feel it rising inside them like water behind a wall. They had not moved on. They had only become better at hiding how much they still cared. There is a difference, my child, between releasing someone and learning how to survive their absence. Your soulmate had confused the two. They thought that because they could complete their days, answer messages, smile in public, and carry on with responsibilities, it meant their heart had healed. But that dinner revealed the truth. They had not healed from you. They had adapted to missing you. And adaptation can look like strength until one honest moment breaks through it. The date said something playful, and your soulmate laughed. But midway through the laugh, their expression changed. The sound reminded them of a moment shared with you. For one breath, they forgot where they were. They remembered how naturally joy had once moved between you, how little effort it took to feel alive in your presence, and how even silence with you seemed to carry more meaning than full conversations with others. That realization unsettled them. They looked down at the table. Their fingers tightened around the edge of a napkin. The person sitting across from them asked whether everything was all right. Your soulmate said yes. But heaven heard the word they did not say. No. No, everything was not all right. No, they were not as detached as they had pretended. No, this new person could not erase what remained unfinished with you. And no, they could not continue lying to themselves much longer. Something huge is waiting for you in this message, because your soulmate did not attend that dinner simply to meet someone new. There was another reason, one they had not admitted even to themselves. Part of them wanted to test the bond they still felt with you. They wanted to know whether your presence in their heart was real or merely the result of loneliness. They wondered whether meeting someone else would weaken the connection. They thought perhaps a new face, a new voice, and a new possibility might finally release them from the invisible thread pulling their thoughts back toward you. But the opposite happened. The more they spoke to the person across from them, the more clearly they felt you. Every comparison pointed in your direction. Every question carried your shadow. Every pause made your absence louder. They entered that place hoping to prove that they could move beyond you. Instead, the evening became evidence that what they felt had never been ordinary. My child, do not misunderstand this revelation. Heaven is not telling you to chase, force, or interfere. True connection is not built through panic. It is not protected by fear. It does not require you to lose your dignity or abandon your peace. This message is not a command to act without wisdom. It is an invitation to see beyond appearances. Sometimes what looks like distance is actually a person struggling to understand the depth of what they feel. Sometimes what looks like moving on is only an attempt to escape an emotion too powerful to name. Sometimes a dinner with someone else becomes the place where a person finally realizes who they truly wanted beside them. And last night, your soulmate reached that realization. But the story goes deeper. Halfway through the meal, their date asked a question that shifted the entire energy of the evening. Is there someone you still think about? The words landed gently, yet your soulmate felt them like a bell ringing inside an empty cathedral. For several seconds, they said nothing. The room continued around them. Plates moved. Glasses touched tables. A server passed nearby. Someone laughed in the distance. But for your soulmate, the world became strangely quiet. They could have lied. They could have smiled and said no. They could have changed the subject. Instead, they looked at the person sitting across from them and answered with a truth that surprised even them. Yes. One word. But that one word opened everything. Their date did not appear offended. In fact, the person's expression became softer, almost as though they had already sensed it. They asked whether this someone knew how your soulmate felt. Your soulmate's eyes lowered. I don't know, they admitted. That answer has been echoing through them ever since. They do not know whether you understand the depth of their emotions. They do not know whether you have mistaken their silence for indifference. They do not know whether the distance between you has already convinced you that they no longer care. And perhaps most painfully, they do not know whether they waited too long to speak. Do not skip now, because this is where the dinner took an unexpected turn. The person across from your soulmate did not try to compete with you. They did not become cold or angry. Instead, they asked your soulmate to talk about you. At first, your soulmate resisted. They said the situation was complicated. They said too much had happened. They said there were misunderstandings, timing issues, fears, and things left unsaid. But as they continued, their voice began to change. They spoke about the way you made them feel seen. They spoke about how your energy remained with them even after conversations ended. They spoke about the strange peace and fear they felt at the same time, because caring for you had awakened something they could not control. They admitted that they had tried to appear stronger than they were. They admitted that they had pulled away when they wanted closeness. They admitted that they had sometimes acted indifferent because vulnerability frightened them. And then they said something so honest that even heaven marked the moment. They felt like home, and I did not know what to do with that. My child, let those words settle. They felt like home. Not a distraction. Not a temporary fascination. Not someone easily replaced. Home. But your soulmate had spent much of their life learning how to survive without relying too deeply on anyone. They had built walls carefully. They had taught themselves not to expect too much, not to reveal too much, and not to place their heart where another person might hold the power to hurt it. Then you appeared. You did not need to destroy their walls. Your presence simply made those walls feel unnecessary. And that frightened them more than conflict ever could. Your soulmate was not only afraid of losing you. They were afraid of needing you. They were afraid of the tenderness you awakened. They were afraid that if they allowed themselves to fully love you, they could never return to the emotional distance that once kept them safe. So they hesitated. They withdrew. They waited for certainty while offering you confusion. They expected you to understand what they could not explain. And when the connection became quiet, they told themselves perhaps it was better that way. But last night, sitting across from another person, they finally understood the price of their silence. Their date listened without interruption. Then the person said something your soulmate did not expect. "You are not here with me." Your soulmate looked up. The words were not spoken cruelly. They were spoken with clarity. "You are sitting here," the person continued, "but your heart is somewhere else." At that moment, your soulmate felt completely exposed. Not humiliated. Not attacked. Seen. They had worked so hard to hide what they felt, yet a near stranger recognized it within one evening. The truth was no longer something they could deny. They were not available for a new beginning because part of their heart was still standing at the doorway of an unfinished story with you. Stay with me. The next detail is the one that turned a simple dinner into a moment of destiny. Your soulmate asked their date how they knew. The person gave a small smile and said, "Every time you describe what matters to you, your eyes change. You are remembering someone." Your soulmate went silent again. Then, without planning to, they reached toward their phone. Your name was there. Perhaps in an old conversation. Perhaps in a saved contact they had opened many times without sending anything. Perhaps in a photograph they had never deleted. Perhaps in a message they had read more often than they would ever admit. They looked at the screen, and the person across from them noticed. "Is that them?" the date asked. Your soulmate did not answer immediately. They did not need to. Their expression had already spoken. Yes. It was you. And now you must understand something important. This dinner was not a betrayal of the connection. It became a mirror. It showed your soulmate what had remained hidden behind pride, uncertainty, and emotional fear. Heaven did not create the confusion, but heaven used the moment to reveal what confusion had concealed. There are encounters that enter our lives to stay. And there are encounters that enter only to point us back toward the truth. The person across from your soulmate may not have been their future. They may have been the unexpected messenger who helped them see where their heart had never stopped looking. Yet this revelation does not end there. Because after the truth was spoken, your soulmate's date asked one final question. If you could say one thing to that person right now, what would it be? Your soulmate stared at the phone. Their breathing changed. The answer came to them immediately, but fear held it behind their lips. They wanted to say, "I never stopped caring." They wanted to say, "I am sorry I made you question what you meant to me." They wanted to say, "I thought distance would make this easier, but it only showed me what I was losing." They wanted to say, "I have compared everyone to you, and no one has made me feel the way you did." But the words they finally whispered were even more vulnerable. "I hope I am not too late." My child, that is the burden they carried away from the table. Not excitement over a new person. Not the thrill of a new romance. The fear that while they were protecting themselves, they may have allowed the one connection that mattered most to slip away. They began the dinner trying to prove that they could choose someone else. They ended it wondering whether you would ever choose them again. Do not let this fill you with anxiety. Let it fill you with discernment. You are not being asked to wait forever for someone who refuses to communicate. You are not being told to accept confusion as love. Your heart deserves clarity, consistency, and respect. But you are being shown that the silence around you may not tell the whole story. Behind that silence, someone is confronting themselves. Behind that distance, someone is remembering every moment they acted against their own heart. Behind that dinner, someone discovered that replacement was never what they truly wanted. When the meal ended, the person across from your soulmate did something unexpected. They did not ask for another date. They did not try to persuade your soulmate to forget you. Instead, they offered a simple piece of advice. Before you begin something new, finish the truth you left behind. Those words followed your soulmate out of the restaurant. The night air touched their face, but they barely noticed. They stood outside for several moments while people passed around them. Cars moved along the street. Lights reflected against windows. Everything continued, yet your soulmate felt as though their life had stopped at a crossroads. They could return home and bury the truth again. Or they could finally face what their heart had been saying all along. They opened their phone. They found your name. Their finger hovered over it. This was the moment they had imagined many times. The moment when silence could become a message, when distance could become a conversation, and when pride could finally surrender to honesty. But they did not press send. Not yet. Something stopped them. It was not lack of love. It was fear of your response. They imagined that you might ignore them. They imagined that you might have moved on. They imagined that you might ask why they waited so long. They imagined that their words would arrive after your heart had already closed the door. And in that hesitation, they realized another painful truth. They had spent so long fearing rejection that they had created the very distance they were afraid of. Stay till the end, because heaven is revealing the hidden battle within them. Your soulmate is not only deciding whether to reach out. They are deciding whether they are ready to become the kind of person who can love you openly. It is easy to feel something privately. It is harder to honor that feeling through action. It is easy to miss someone at night. It is harder to speak with courage in daylight. It is easy to call a connection special. It is harder to offer the honesty, responsibility, and consistency that a special connection deserves. Last night, your soulmate understood that love cannot survive forever inside unspoken intentions. A heart may be sincere, but sincerity without expression can still leave another person wounded. Feelings may be real, but real feelings must eventually become real choices. And now they are standing near that choice. But there is a detail I have not yet revealed. The dinner was arranged by someone who knows more about you than your soulmate realized. The person sitting across from them was not a complete stranger. They had heard your name before. They had seen the way your soulmate reacted when someone mentioned you. They already knew there was an unfinished story. That is why their questions were so precise. That is why they noticed the change in your soulmate's eyes. And that is why they did not seem surprised when your soulmate admitted that someone still occupied their heart. This person had entered the dinner carrying information your soulmate did not know they possessed. Something had been said about you before the evening began. Something your soulmate's date had promised not to reveal too early. A truth about why the dinner was arranged. A truth about who wanted your soulmate to attend. A truth that connects directly to the silence between you. Your soulmate believed they were being introduced to a possible new romantic partner. But the person across from them had another purpose. They had been asked to observe, to listen, and to discover whether your soulmate's feelings for you were truly over. And the answer became undeniable. No. They were not over. They were deeper than your soulmate had admitted. The person across from them now had to decide whether to reveal who had sent them into that conversation and why your name had been mentioned before your soulmate even arrived. Because the dinner date was not what it appeared to be. The person sitting across from your soulmate was connected to someone from your shared story, someone who has quietly watched the distance grow and has been carrying a secret that could bring the entire truth into the light. And just before your soulmate left, that person leaned closer, lowered their voice, and said, "There is something you need to know about them before you decide what to do next." Your soulmate stopped breathing for a moment. They turned back toward the table. The person reached into their bag, placed something beside the unfinished glass, and covered it with their hand. Your soulmate stared at it, confused. Then the person said your name. Not casually. Not as a question. As though they had been waiting all night to reveal why they were truly there. And when they finally lifted their hand, your soulmate saw something connected to you that made every emotion they had tried to control rise at once. But what they saw, who arranged the dinner, and why this person already knew so much about you is the part heaven has not yet allowed me to reveal.